Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Jeremy Miner. Jeremy Miner is chairman of Seventh Level, which is a global sales and training company that's ranked 1,232 by Inc. out of the top 5,000 in the US in 2021. That's pretty amazing that you are on that list and so far up on that list.
Yeah, we made it on the well, that's a nice compliment. We made it on the list, so top 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States, and we're actually ranked number 1 fastest growing sales training company in the United States. Bunch of boring stuff.
No, congratulations to you, because I think sales is one of those areas that's such a conundrum for companies. We know we need it. We can't survive without it. Sure. Many don't know what to do with it. We have a division or a person who handles it, or if we're a small company, it's the new hat we grab today to do what we have to do today to have sales, right? And then we wonder why we struggle. So Jeremy, you have done so much in this area. You have training. You are in 40 different countries. You have trained over 200,000 salespeople. It's remarkable what you have done. And so I would like you to start with just why sales? How did you get into this? And my goodness, how did you grow to being the #1 sales training company?
Well, okay, so let's do this, because that's a long story and I don't want to bore everybody to death, because our sales training company, we just started 3 years ago, but we have really gone everywhere very, very quickly. There's some reasons for that, but let's do this. I'll share with your audience a little bit of my background, because I think just for a couple minutes, my background, I think, relates to what's necessary to really take your income in sales. If you're a sales professional, if you're a coach, if you're a C-level executive, even if you're an entrepreneur or business owner who's trying to scale your company, if you want to get to the next level. So I first got into sales, it was about 20 years ago. Okay, I'm that old. I was a broke college student, and I actually got my first sales job selling home security systems door to door while I was in college. Okay, company pretty much, did a training, gave us a couple of books from the gurus, told us to read those like in 3 days, gave us a script, memorized the script, and pretty much, drove us out in a van into a neighborhood, dropped us off, and basically said, hey, go make some sales. It's going to be easy. We'll pick you up when it's dark. And that's really how it got started. And I actually thought, I'm this 21-year-old kid. You got to remember, I'm 21 years old. I barely just got married. I had a baby on the way. I got started really, really young. Okay. I'm like, I've got to make some money. Like I can't just go to college here and live off student loans. Like I have to work. And so I thought at that point that selling was going to be easy, because that's what the recruiter said. So I started knocking on doors and I started talking to my prospects about all the features and the benefits of the product and how much it was going to help them. And I started noticing that I was getting all these objections. What? You didn't tell me about that. We can't afford it, Jeremy. We already have that. We don't need it. We need to keep looking around. I need to talk to my spouse. I need to think it over. Can you call me back in a week, a month, a year later? And I was like, well, what's going on here? And I remember, this is kind of crazy, but I remember one day after, this was probably about 7 or 8 weeks of this. And I remember sitting down on a curb at night. Imagine it's like middle of July, it's hot, it's humid, you're like sweating, you've just worked 12 hours. And I remember that day I made 0 sales. Now in that job, it was straight commission. Like you didn't get paid even $5 an hour to go knock on the doors. You got paid 0 unless you made a sale. It was straight commission. So I had made $0 that day. I'd worked 12 hours. That entire week, this was like on a Friday, I'd already put in like 40 or 50 hours. Okay. I made 0 sales that entire week. So imagine working 50, 60 hours a week, you make nothing. Okay. At that point, I remember how I felt. I remember I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to go home to my wife at that time? And my little girl, basically say like, hey, like we don't have enough money to pay the rent. Like we might need to talk with your parents about moving into the basement. How embarrassing is that? Is this little kid that just got married? So I remember like, my feet like rubbing into the ground and like the hot concrete on there, like my legs just burned out. I remember like feeling like just broken as a human being, like as a provider, right? And maybe some of your audience maybe have felt that way when they first got into sales. And here's the reason why I tell you this story. And some of you might not know this, but after about 5 years, okay, so that struggling that right there, because I didn't have the right skills at that point. Within 5 years of that day, where I was like, maybe selling just wasn't for me. From within 5 years of that date, I was internationally ranked in the top 50 of all salespeople in the entire world selling anything. And I was making multiple 7 figures a year in commissions as a W-2 salesperson. 5 years later, at that point, when I was like, I think I need to quit and I need to go get a real job. People in the office were making fun of me because I wasn't making any sales. And it wasn't my fault. I just didn't have the right skills. So I remember when my sales manager picked me up that night, to go back to that story, he popped in a Tony Robbins CD. Yes, they were still CDs back in the early 2000s, like 2001 or something. He popped in a Tony Robbins CD that completely changed everything for me, okay? If I had not listened to that CD, just this one sentence, I don't know if I would honestly be on here with you today. I don't know if anything would have happened. I might have quit, got a regular job, and not even been on here with you today. And Tony said something like this. I might be butchering. He said, most people fail for the simple reason they don't learn the right skills necessary to succeed. They don't learn the right skills. He goes on to say, everybody, for the most part, is taught skills, but the ones who fail were the ones who were not taught the right ones. And I remember when I heard that, I'm like, it was like a light bulb went off in my head that maybe what the company was training me and what I was learning from these sales gurus from these books, maybe they just weren't the right skills. Maybe they were outdated. Maybe they didn't work very well anymore. So at that point, I had a thirst. Where do I find the right skills? Now, here was my dilemma though. Okay, at the same time, the company's telling me like, sell this way, memorize the script. When they say this, say that back, give them a rebuttal, and I'm like, okay. Now I'd use some of those things and I would notice I would make a few sales here and there, but I also noticed when I used certain techniques the gurus were teaching me that it didn't work at all. And in fact, the exact opposite of what I wanted to happen would happen. It would actually trigger resistance. Now, at the same time, I was in college, right? I'm a college kid, 21, I was junior in college, and my major was behavioral science and human psychology. And I was learning from my professors and these experts that the most persuasive way to communicate was over here. But from the gurus in the company I worked for, they were telling me it was over here. I'm like, how is that possible? So I was like, what do I need to do here? So I started learning how to use techniques from human behavior that work with human behavior, okay, and intermingle that into the sales process. Whereas traditional selling techniques teach us techniques that actually work against human behavior, pushing, consultative pushing, okay? I started learning from human psychology how to get my prospects to pull me in where I didn't have to push. And selling became very, very easy and extremely profitable. So that's my boring background.
So I want to just move on from that because I think that is a struggle that people have in many areas. It's not just sales, but it's getting the right skills for what it is that you need. And every time you change a job, there's new skills.
Yeah.
And most companies don't train for the specific new skill set that you're going to need.
A lot of times they're just training outdated stuff and they just haven't kept up with things with how consumers are changing. That's the problem. Keep going. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No problem. So you have a process that you call the NEPQ. What is that?
NEPQ, yeah, there you go. I know it's a behavioral science, boring stuff. So our methodology that I developed over the course of really my 17-year sales career before we started 7th level is called NEPQ. It stands for write this down, neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. Neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. Now, how is that different than like traditional selling techniques or consultative selling techniques? People at workshops always ask me that. So remember, go back to my timeline. I'm going to college, I'm studying behavioral science, human psychology, the study of the brain, how human beings make decisions, how and why people are persuaded and or not persuaded to do something, right? Which is really what sales is. So check this out. According to behavioral science, there are 3 forms of communication. So anybody listening to this right now, write these down, because once you understand the differences in persuasion and where you are now, like right here, compared to where you actually can be, it will completely change everything for you. If you're a business owner, it will change everything your salespeople are doing. If you're an individual salesperson, it changes everything you do as well, okay? So the first mode of communication, what we call really now traditional selling or even boiler room selling, okay? According to behavioral science, we are the least persuasive. We're the least persuasive when we tell people things, or we attempt to dominate them, or push them, or posture them, or manipulate them into doing something we want them to do. Think boiler room selling, like Wolf on Wall Street. It's an exciting show. Hey, I got a great opportunity for you. Then we talk about the features and the benefits and why they should go with us. And we talk down about our competitors and why they need to buy from us. And we're going to give you a special promotion. And here's why we're the best. It's just like if you tell your spouse that they really, really need to do something for you, and then you push them to do it, what do they typically do back? They push back. It's just how we react as human beings, okay? So I'll give you a few examples of the least persuasive way to sell. And usually when I bring this up at events, people are like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm not where I want to be financially as a salesperson. Like it's like a revelation that just hit them, right? Smack them in the face. Presenting. We're all taught. Wow, we got to give a great presentation. We got to show them how great our products and services are. And we have to have a 50 slide deck that shows them our office and our Better Business Bureau and our customer service awards. And we've got this, the best this, and we've got the best this, which doesn't every salesperson you've ever talked to say they have the best product or service? How many salespeople out there selling tell you that, yeah, Lois, my product's the 5th best in the market? Nobody. They all say they're the best. So when your prospects, when you say things like that to your prospect, when you say you're the best and you're the number one and you've got this and you've got the best owners and the best customer service and you talk down your competitors, they actually trust you less because they're used to every salesperson who's ever tried to sell or pitch them something say the exact same thing. So according to the data, it's not very persuasive if your presentation is more than 10% of that entire sales conversation, and or if you're in a complex sound environment, part of your process cannot be more than 10%. Most is 50%. I mean, most salespeople, 50% of them is just presenting their solution. Has to be narrowed down to 10%. We'll go over that in a minute. What about telling your story? Hate to tell you this. Nobody cares about your story when you're selling one-to-one. Whose story do they care more about? Their story, right? Well, revelation. What about giving a sales pitch? We've all been told you got to give a great pitch. According to science, not very persuasive. I mean, Shark Tank. You ever watch Shark Tank on CNBC?
Right.
The would-be entrepreneurs walk in there and the shark's there and they start pitching their product. Watch the shark's body language. They're like, oh, it's like, it's a turnoff, okay? And how about the big one? Assuming the sale. According to the data, very low on the persuasion poll, especially if you're in a more complex sound environment that requires multiple calls and touches. See how that works? Now, that's the first mode. Now, here's the second mode, okay? We are more persuasive when we attempt to have a discussion with somebody, okay? That's the second form of communication. It's generally known as consultative selling. Now, we typically find most C-level executives or that sell B2B are more in the consultative selling realm, right? Came out in the late 80s with a book called Spin Selling, where a professor, Neil Rackham, taught that you needed to ask logical-based questions to find out the needs of the client. But what's a potential downfall when you only ask logical-based questions? We call those surface-level questions, where your prospect is going to give you logical-based surface-level answers in return. And do people buy on logic or emotion? Of course they buy on emotion, right? Brain studies prove that. So here are a few examples of some consultative questions that you don't want to use because everybody uses them. Mary, tell me, what's keeping you awake at night? Or can you tell me 2 problems that your firm's having, John? Or who besides you would be involved in this important decision? Or Sally, tell me, what are you looking for in a solution? Or what sort of budget do you have set aside for this project? Okay, these are just boring surface level consultative questions that is not going to trigger the prospect to feel any urgency to resolve their problem, to move away from pain. Okay, most of your prospects, when you first talk to them, don't even know what they need, right? Like I always hear trainers like, oh, you got to sell to the need. And I'm like, how can you sell to the need when the prospect doesn't even know what they need yet? You know, it's like if I have a headache right now, I'm like, oh my gosh, my head is it's killing me. I'm going to go to my doctor because I need some medication. Like that's what you feel you need. And you go to the doctor like, oh, doctor, I've got such a bad headache. I just need some medication. Can you prescribe me XYZ? Yeah, sure, no problem. Here's the. Okay, well, he's selling to your need, but you don't really know what your need is. See, the best doctors, they like, whoa, I'm not sure that you can I ask a few things here? And then they start asking a few questions and they find out the symptoms of what's going on and the root cause of the headache and how the headache's affecting you. And then they find out that maybe you need a brain scan, and they do a brain scan and they find a tumor and you've got 3 months to live. Well, now you're selling to something completely different. See, that prospect didn't know what they needed when they first came to you. They thought they knew. That's why you can never sell to the need. You sell to the real problems, okay? Make sense with you? Okay, so that's the second mode. Now, the third mode of communication, okay? We are the most persuasive when we allow others to persuade themselves. Let me repeat that. We are the most persuasive when we allow others to persuade themselves. That's actually called dialogue. When we ask what we just talked about, what are called neuro-emotional persuasion questions. It stands for NEPQ. Now, the key is, what questions and techniques do we need to ask with the right tonality that work with human behavior that will trigger that prospect psychologically to want to pull us in rather than us trying to push our solution on them? How do we get somebody to persuade themselves? That's a $10 million question. Can we just show up and say, Mr. Prospect, go ahead and persuade yourself. Here's my bank wire information. No, you have to learn specific skilled questions, when and how to ask them in a step-by-step structure, no more winging it, that will get your prospects to sell themselves rather than you trying to do it. Those are the 3 types of selling. Make sense?
It makes tremendous sense. So let me ask you a follow-up question to that, because it is so, in a way, intuitive.
Yeah.
But dialogue. The problem many people have is getting that door open so you can have dialogue. That's the first part of the sales strategy. And often that door remains closed because it begins with the push strategy, not a potential dialogue. So if you would talk about that, please. I can see you're just ready to go.
I'm ready to jump in. Okay. We have to understand why our prospects are emotionally shutting down when we're asking questions. How is that even possible? They have a problem. We have the solution to solve it, yet they're shutting down when I'm asking questions. How is that triggered? Here's what we have to understand. This is just behavioral science. Within the first 7 to 12 seconds of every single interaction you are with a human being, sales interaction, non-sales interaction, okay, they are picking up on social cues from you. Subconsciously, we cannot help it as a human being to not pick up on social cues, okay? Any sales interaction you're on, whether you're selling to a board, whether you're selling in person, whether you're selling on Zoom, whether you're stopped by an office, whether you're cold calling, it does not matter. They are picking up on your verbal and your nonverbal cues from your tonality and what you are saying and or maybe not asking that triggers their brain to react in one of 2 ways. Now, if you come across needy, if you come across nervous, aggressive even, or even attached, that's the key word, attached, and you don't know the right questions to ask, it triggers a person's brain to go into what we call fight or flight mode, where they try to get rid of you very fast. And they say, I'm just too busy right now. Can you call back later, Lois? Or, we don't really need that right now. We already have somebody that uses that. We don't have the money for that. I'm good. No, I'm not interested. No, I'm good. Maybe call me back in a week, a month, a year later. That's fight or flight mode. That's triggered by how we come across in that first part of that sales conversation, in the first 10 seconds. Now, if you come across neutral, more relaxed, more calm, and especially detached, that's the keyword, detached, know the right questions, it triggers a human's brain to become curious enough where they feel like they want to engage with you, that they want to open up to you, as you might have something that's very important to them. So we have to learn how to come across detached from the expectations of making the sale, and instead focus on whether there's a sale to be made in the first place. Focus on whether or not we can actually help this person or company solve their problems. Now, do I mean when you get on a call or you're presenting into a board or you're face-to-face with a prospect that you shouldn't make the sale? No, not at all. Your goal on every interaction is to make that sale. But you have to keep that to yourself. The exact moment that prospect feels like you are selling to them or they're being sold is the moment they emotionally start to shut down. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I think what it also says is often when we go into sales, there's an element of need that you have as a salesperson. It's like your story when you first began of needing to support your family. That's right. So how do you detach? Because there, in my mind, there's that edge between pushing yourself and that which is attached, and then that detachment. So how do you do that as a salesperson?
You have to learn. Okay, this leads into a really good subject. You have to learn how to view yourself as what we call a problem finder and problem solver, not a product pusher. You always hear about problem solving. You can read any book back here, okay? And they'll tell you, you gotta be great at solving problems. Well, I hate to tell you, if you can't help the prospect find problems in their own mind that they didn't think they had, and they don't buy from you, you can't really solve their problems. So in our day and age, you have to be even better at problem finding. Now, I want everybody that's listening to Lois and I here to grab a pen and piece of paper. If you're driving, don't worry about it. We don't want you to wreck, okay? But try to grab a pen and piece of paper. If you're driving, just think about this question I'm about to ask you, okay? If you have the pen and piece of paper, write it down too, okay? I want to ask you this question. Do your prospects have problems? Do your prospects have problems? Now, I'm assuming that you was like, yeah, because there's no product or service that's ever been made that doesn't solve a problem of some sense, even an emotional problem, possibly like a Lambo, okay? You don't necessarily need to buy the Lambo to go to point A to B, but it solves an emotional need. So everything that's ever been made, okay, or service or product solves some type of problem, okay? So you're like, yeah, my product and service solves problems. Now, I want you to take that piece of paper, or if you're driving, think in your mind, write down 2 problems that your prospects have. Write down 2 problems that your prospects have. My prospect has this problem, and my prospects always have this type of problem. Now, look at those 2 problems. Or if you're just thinking about them, look at them in your mind and ask yourself this: does your solution solve those 2 problems? Does your solution solve those 2 problems? Now, when I ask that question at events, most people are like, yes, my solution solves those 2 problems. So here's my question. If your prospects have problems, your solution solves those, then what's the missing link? Why are they not buying from you if you can solve their problem? Now, I'm going to make a suggestion to everybody, and it's very hard. It's very hard. It's going to come across completely probably different than what you've ever heard before. It's not your leads. That's the problem. It's not that you don't meditate enough or listen to enough personal development, or it's not that you don't even work hard enough. I know so many hardworking salespeople that are completely dead broke. It's what you are saying, and more importantly, not asking, that's triggering your prospects to run the other way. That's what it is. So once you change what you're saying and how you're saying it, your tonality, and more importantly, you learn the right questions to ask, but at the right time. in that sales conversation, all of that can change for you. Like I said, in our day and age, you have to be a problem finder and problem solver. It's not good enough to just be a problem solver, okay? You have to be better at problem finding. And that means asking the right questions at the right time that helps your prospect find problems in their mind that they didn't even know they had. It's not you telling them what their problems are, because that goes in one ear out the other, because you're biased, you're the salesperson. It's allowing them to tell themselves what those problems. Here's one thing we all have to understand. I talked about it a little bit ago with the doctor analogy. Most of your prospects, when you first start talking to them, don't even know they have a problem. Or maybe they know they have a problem, but they don't really know how bad the problem really is. Or maybe they don't understand the consequences of what will happen if they don't do anything about solving the problem. Now, once you learn advanced questioning, NEPQ, not only are you able to help them find one problem, but you're able to help them find 2 problems and 3 problems and maybe 4 or 5 other problems that they didn't even think about themselves. And when you're able to help them see how many problems they really have from where they are compared to where they want to be, and that gap could become so big in their mind, how do you think they view you? They view you as the expert, as the trusted authority who's going to get them the results they want. And it doesn't matter if you charge more than your competitors, they will always go with you because they view you as the expert who's going to get them the end result they want. Make sense?
It makes tremendous sense. And it takes me back to the beginning, which is to be able to sort and to talk about what is it that they really need, right? How do I solve a problem for it? What's really the problem? First, you have to get that meeting. You have to know how to open that door. Suggestions there?
Well, yeah. So you have to, hey, and one good thing, I'm glad you brought that up, that question, because we have some free resources that people can go to get those questions. I'll give you a few examples. I know we don't have like 3 hours here, but if they want to learn those questions, like how to open up conversations, we call those connecting questions that take the focus off you and puts it on the prospect. They're welcome to join our free Facebook group. It's called, just go to www, and you'll probably have it in the show notes, salesrevolution.group. So it's salesrevolution.group. Right when you join, there'll be like a 2-question survey because we want to know what industry you're in, what type of products you sell. It just helps us track industries that are in our Facebook group. We have about 12,000 people in there, salespeople and C-level executives, entrepreneurs. Right when you join, look in your Facebook Messenger because we will tag you a free resource, a free 30-minute training called the NEPQ 101 mini course. And our CEO, Matt Ryder, who's my business partner, will actually break down those questions for you. And he's going to give you several questions that you can use to literally go out and start selling more today, not in a week, not in a month, not in a year. So they're welcome to get those free resources within our Facebook group. That really helps a lot of people. So we want to learn what are called connecting questions. Okay, now there's more to that. Connecting questions are just the start. We can't just connect with the prospect and then somehow be like, hey, do you want to buy? No, that's not how it works. Every sales interaction we're on, we have to focus on this saying. We have to focus on the ABDs of selling. Always be disarming. Always be disarming. Every sales trainer is always going to say, you got to do the ABCs of closing. ABCs of closing. Yeah, if you want to be average, you can do the ABCs of closing. You can always be closing and walloping your prospects on their head, but most of the time that's going to trigger sales resistance and they're going to run the other way from you and you're never going to hear from them. They go missing in action. You want to focus on the ABDs of selling, always be disarming. So throughout that conversation, we want to ask questions that disarm the prospect where they feel open enough to keep telling us the truth, to keep going under the surface with what their real problems are. So we want to ask what are called connecting questions. So let's say, and I'm just going to give an example here because I know you got tons of different industries on here. So let's say that you sell, I was just working on a script for one of our companies we train that sells lead and marketing services to corporations, for their salespeople. All right. So let's say that you sell lead generation, for example, and let's say that you have somebody that's booked on your calendar. They responded to some type of ad or lead magnet. They're on your calendar. They show up on Zoom. Instead of coming on there and say, hey, Lois, how's it? How are you doing today? Like every other salesperson would, because unless you're genuinely interested in sitting there 20 minutes and letting Lois say, you know what, my day's been this and that, and oh, really? Unless you're really that genuine, it comes across as ingenuine because that's not a genuine question and everybody knows it, right? So you're automatically going to trigger sales resistance in most people. So when you come on there, you just get to the point, usually it's like, hey, can you hear me? I can hear you. You know, the little Zoom things that we've been knowing since COVID. Okay, so it looks like, all right, so Lois, nice to have you on here. It looks like you booked on the calendar about possibly getting some outside help with getting maybe a higher quality lead to your salespeople, right? So I'm right into it. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, and I would say the first part of this call is really more for us to find out more about your firm's background as far as what type of advertising and leads you guys are typically using now. And then I would say really what you're looking for, just to see if we could actually help you, because there's some companies where there's just not much we can do for them. You know what I mean by that? Oh yeah, I know what they're always going to say, yeah, I know what you mean by that. Okay, now I was curious, like when you saw the ad where we were going over like X, Y, and Z, what, I guess, what was it about the ad that maybe attracted your attention? See what I did there? Instead of saying, that's a connecting question. Instead of saying, when you saw the ad where you saw X, Y, and Z, Lois, what was it about the ad that attracted your attention? Well, that sounds really scripted. But if I slow down, like now, when you saw the ad, I guess when you went through the ad, what was it about the, I guess the ad that maybe attracted your attention? See how what's the difference in that?
It's off the cuff, it's casual, it's informal, it's natural.
It's natural. It's a natural conversation. Now, it's not a winging it conversation. I'm not just throwing random questions out there. That's a step-by-step structure. Okay, those connecting questions just to start off. Okay, and then I might say, and they're gonna, oh, I'd like this, and I was looking about this. And what were you, I guess, what were you guys hoping to get out of the call with us today, just so we have a better understanding? Well, we're looking to see what your prices are and what type of quality leads you get. They might say that. Yeah, we'll go through those details for sure. I probably need to know a little bit more about what you're using now as far as lead gen to make sure we could get you guys where you're wanting to go. And at that point, I can go over different options if that helps you. Oh, yeah, that's good. And boom, see how I'm continually asking questions that do what? Disarm the prospect, where they still want to engage, where they still want to open up and eventually get below the surface of what's really going on. That's just connecting questions. Then we move into situation questions to help them find out what their present situation is. Okay, here's where they are, their current situation, current state. We're then going to ask what are called problem awareness questions that help them see what their real problems are. Okay, so we're starting to build a gap from where they are compared to where they want to be. Those are problem awareness questions. Then we're going to learn to ask what are called solution awareness questions that get them to see what their future is going to look like once all these problems that your questions have helped them find are solved. That's their objective state. Current state, objective state. Then we're going to rip it away with what's called a consequence question. Once they're like, oh my gosh, it would feel so good to have the right leads so they start to get emotional, and we're going to rip that emotion away where they have to defend themselves on why they need to change now. So let's say, going back to that lead example, if you sell leads or something to corporations, and I might come in and say, okay, but this would be a consequence question, 3/4 of the way into that first call. Okay, but what are you guys going to do though if you don't do anything about this? And you keep getting these lower quality leads you mentioned to your salespeople, and the company keeps stagnating the next 3, 6, 12 months from now. See, that's a consequence question. Now, at this point, because I built so much more trust by my questioning, I can challenge them at this point. I can't ask that question within the first 20 seconds because there's no trust, there's no relevance yet. So that's a few examples. You with me?
I am with you, and you are just a fount of wonderful information. And we will have all of your information, connecting information, in the show notes. I have one more question that I think haunts people since COVID is, how has selling changed since COVID? And there's that gnawing uncertainty I think people have with the economy remaining uncertain, especially as we move into more inflation. So what has changed, and how do we?
I don't think. I will tell you. Companies, corporations, and individual salespeople have become even more skeptical and cautious about making the wrong buying decisions than they have ever done before. Why? Because they're not necessarily, if they're a corporation, they're not necessarily planning out 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You know what they're planning out right now? 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, because of the uncertainty. So that means if you want to increase your sales, you're going to have to learn a lot more advanced sales techniques like we're talking about than you are now. Otherwise, your sales are going to go down. Okay. Now, if you're selling Christmas lights, maybe that's a little bit different because everybody wants Christmas lights right now. But if you're in the real world of sales and you're selling high-end products and services, your prospects have become more skeptical and cautious than they have ever done before. Now, one of the reasons why, not just even COVID, is because we live in the information age world. Okay. Your prospects are being sold to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. And I want you to think about this for a second. One of our clients, Brandon Kane, he's the author, New York Times bestselling author of Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. Okay. He does all the social media for like Taylor Swift and Rihanna and MTV, like huge social media guy out in Hollywood. And he says in his book, he says that there are over 3 billion content creators that you as a salesperson or a company are competing with for your prospects' attention. You are even competing with 14-year-old kids on TikTok. Dead serious. 3 billion right now. Guess how many content creators there were that you competed with 20 years ago? Just 20 years ago. Just take a wild guess.
Let's say 25,000.
All right. So yeah, there was 1 million. Now there's 3 billion. Okay. So think about this. Everybody's like, no, you're not being sold to all the time. What are you talking about, Jeremy? Oh, really? Think about it. You wake up in the morning. What's the first thing you do? You grab your phone. You start going through Facebook or your Instagram. You see ads trying to sell you something. You go in the kitchen. You're like, I need some coffee. Turn on the TV. You see commercials trying to sell you something. You get in the car. You're like, just need some good music to pump me up. Gonna have a hard day. You turn on the radio. You hear radio ads trying to sell you something. You drive down the road. You're looking around at the cows in the farm and you're looking at the city lights or wherever you live and you see billboards trying to sell you something. You have your lunch break. You get back on your phone. Oh gosh, what's my aunt doing? Oh, she's selling her newest, latest, greatest MLM. She's trying to recruit you in. She's trying to sell you something. See, everybody gets sold to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And because of that, human beings in the information age we live in have built out thick skin. They have a wall of resistance. So anytime they feel that you are trying to sell them something, that wall comes up. It's triggered by you, the salesperson, and you immediately have to overcome that. What I'm suggesting is when you learn how to use human behavior in your sales process, when you learn how to use NEPQ and you disarm the prospect continually, all the way from the start of that first call to they actually send in the funding, whether you're in a 1-call close, a 2-call close, maybe you're in a B2B complex selling environment, and it's 6 months later, you have to continually disarm the prospect where they still open up and want to engage and tell you the truth of what's going on under the surface. When you learn how to do those skills, you have control of any sales conversation or process you are in, and you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in commissions as a salesperson, even more. And if you're a business owner, your company can scale 10, 20, 30 times more than what you're doing now, even if you're doing well. That's the difference.
Wow. What a great note to be ending on. But before we do close, Jeremy, what have we missed that people should know about?
Well, I would say this one question. I get asked this question a lot when I train. People say, Jeremy, if you could describe selling in one word. I don't know why people ask me this. It just seems like it's something like, if you could describe selling in one word, what would that one word be? I'm like, one word would be change. All selling is change. All sales is change. It's about how good you are at helping your prospect view in their mind that by changing their situation, meaning paying for your product or service to solve their problems, is far less risky for them than them doing nothing at all, staying in the status quo. Their problems stay the same and nothing ever changes, which is more risky. So whether your prospect is wanting something better, or they're trying to get away from that pain, it's just about that one word. It's about change. Now, here's where we have to understand those. Here's your problem. Human beings don't like change. So selling is all about change. Human beings don't like change, even though they say they do, because it makes us feel uncomfortable, maybe unsettled, especially when it's by some type of pushy salesperson who's trying to push their product or service on the prospect right when they meet it. Human behavior shows that we value something that we know, something that is familiar to us, even if we don't like it, far more over something that is new or maybe unknown to us. Okay. So we have to realize when we're selling, no matter what you're selling, you are not selling the thing. You're not selling the product or service. We call that product pushing. You're selling the results of what that thing does. If you sell cybersecurity to banks, you're not selling the cybersecurity software. You're selling the protection that that software gives to their clients. If you're a real estate agent, you're selling a home. You're not selling them the home. You're selling them maybe the peace of mind that that mother has, that they're in a safer neighborhood compared to where their old home was. So you're not selling the car. You're selling them maybe the results of that car is they want better gas mileage. That's what you're selling. So you're not selling the thing, you're selling the results of that thing. So all sales is change. And once you learn that and how to detach yourself, you learn the right questions, you can really sell anything and write your own ticket and go anywhere in the world you want to go.
What a gift. Jeremy, you've taken a topic that many, many people struggle with and boiled it down into something doable and understandable. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, selling, if you really think about it, selling has been around for millions of years. And people are like, no, selling's not been around millions. No, you ever read the Bible? You ever read about the war in heaven? The war in heaven where God had a plan and Satan had this plan. You know, if you've ever read the Bible, whatever we have of the Bible, there's probably a lot more we don't have, right? But talk about the war of heaven. There was a war in heaven, and 1/3 of God's, children or angels or whatever you want to call them accepted Satan's plan, and the other 2/3 accepted God's plan. Well, I want you to really think about that war. How was that war fought? Was it fought with tanks? Was it fought with guns, bullets, swords? No, it was a war of persuasion. It was a war of influence. It was a war of convincing others. So selling is the most critical skill that a human being has to learn if they want to have influence and really change the world. You have to learn how to communicate the right way.
On that note, thank you so much. And before we conclude, Jeremy, I just want to let the audience know that you have a book that has just come out, correct?
Well, it's not getting published till late spring.
Oh, late spring. Okay.
Coming out with go ahead.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's a book written by one of my good friends. His name's Jerry Acuff. He is the CEO of a sales consulting firm called Delta Point. It's been around for 20 plus years. He is a legend in the training industry. And we decided to write a book together. It's going to be his last book. He's about to retire here in the next 4, 5, 6 years. The dude, I think he's going to work till he's 115. So maybe he'll retire in 40 years. I don't know. But it's one of his books. So we wrote this book, and it's called The New Model of Selling: How to Sell to an Unsellable Generation. How do you sell to an unsellable? How do you sell to people who are unsellable? And we really dive deep into the NEPQ process. I think people are really going to like that. It gets published late spring of 2022. So we still got about 6, 7 months. These publishing companies just take a billion years. If they say it's going to be published in January, that's going to mean it gets published the next December in my mind.
Well, congratulations. I'm eager to see that book, and I think many in our audience are going to be eager to see it as well. Yeah. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for being with us today. And remember, those of you who are with us, that we will have information about Jeremy and his company in the show notes. Please visit his Facebook group. We encourage you to do that. And if you have any questions or need help getting in contact with him, please let us know. We're glad to help you.
Yeah, and Lois, I would say that's the easiest thing. Instead of sending them to the IG and this link and that link, 67 links, if they want to learn more about what we do, we have some free resources that they'll get right when they join. Just send them to that Facebook group, salesrevolution.group. Right when they join, answer the 2 survey questions, and then check your Facebook Messenger. Someone on my team We'll message you a free resource on different questions you can use to start selling more. I'll give you a few little tidbits there. This will give you a little bit more for sure.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And those of you who are listening to Building My Legacy podcast today, thank you so much for being with us. And remember to visit our website at www.buildtomorrow with the number 2. And we will see you again very soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Lois.
Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell button above. Leave comments. We'd love to hear what you think. And visit our other social media links as well. Thanks much.